set out to prioritize polarizing divisive content. It just happened to be a side effect of choices they did make. Part of why I came forward is that I am extremely, extremely worried about the condition of our societies, our condition of the global South, and the interaction of the choices Facebook has made and how it plays out more broadly.
Let's speak about this with Ben Wagner. He's an assistant professor of policy and management at Delft University of Technology, joining me now from The Hague in the Netherlands. Ben, good to talk to you on this. The way we hear Frances Haugen talk about Facebook, it makes it seem as though they are responsible for many atrocities we've seen over the last few years. We think of the Rohingya in Myanmar, what's happening in northern Ethiopia. But it also begs the question, does one social media company really exert so much power?
So researchers have been writing about this for many years, and it's great to see now that this is being better documented, so it's able to prove and to demonstrate and to document in great detail all of the terrible things that Facebook has been associated with. So the negative effects of what Facebook does, and I think we need to be very clear about this, the greatest effects are far outside of the US and are far outside of the UK. As you've mentioned, some of the things that happened in Myanmar, also the things that have happened in Ethiopia, they are closely connected to the way Facebook does business, where it essentially focuses on the areas where it is most likely to be regulated and does a little bit there, not enough, but a little bit, while almost completely ignoring all of the areas where it's unlikely to be put under significant pressure.
So what does this actually mean for Facebook? Because, I mean, we're not seeing a situation right now where it's losing advertisers, for example.
Well, this is the troubling thing. You see, you mentioned a few minutes ago in Facebook's quarterly reports, profits are up. And despite this, the more and more information we get about the problems in the company and the great problems that it's causing, this doesn't seem to be troubling advertisers. And it's confusing to see advertisers in a situation where they would be willing to support a company that is engaging in these kinds of business practices, while it clearly, at the same time, ignoring the very manifold, highly problematic, and really, both at a human and at a professional level, extremely troubling human rights violations that are directly connected to Facebook's business in numerous parts of the world.
So how do regulators, or how do lawmakers rather, start to regulate something like not just Facebook, but I mean social media in general? You would think of Twitter, for example, where anybody can go on and express opinions. And the only sort of regulation we've really seen so far are groups like Facebook having internal members of their staff looking at how to regulate it. And they've done things like ban President Trump, for example. But is this enough?
So I think the example that you make is really good, because Facebook's internal staff have on numerous occasions told their leadership that there are terrible, terrible things happening on Facebook and these things need to change. And systematically, these internal staff have been overruled in numerous different cases. And now that we have that documented, it's much clearer that there is internal knowledge within Facebook of the bad things that are happening. And they are fully aware of the problems that they are causing, and they still continue. So in this situation, it's important to acknowledge again, neither in the US or the UK are the greatest problems with Facebook. So all of the regulators need to look beyond their own borders and really acknowledge that Facebook is causing problems across the world. And so in responding to these challenges, they also need to ensure that Facebook reduces its harms across the world. At the same time, of course, there's a great challenge in the way in which that regulation takes place to ensure that freedom of expression and other basic fundamental rights are ensured by those regulators. But it doesn't mean that the situation right now is okay. On the one hand, the regulators can't trust Facebook. At the same time, when you're in a situation where we are now, you'd probably need a radically different Facebook from the one we have now. And it's hard to imagine how the regulatory tools that we have would lead to a radically different Facebook than the one we have now. Because the main challenges we see is that for a long time, the Facebook and other organizations, other big tech companies in this industry have been treated in a very different way. We can't imagine, let's say, with a large tobacco company or with a large oil company, that the regulators would be asking those large tobacco or large oil companies how they'd like to be regulated and how they would like to solve these problems. So I really think there's a need for a different regulatory paradigm to ensure that the companies that are involved in these really terrible situations and the terrible human rights violations that we're witnessing around the world are no longer doing that in the same way.
Ben Wagner, good to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time.